Okay guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the BMW B57 reliability. This has been a highly requested video as many of you guys own this engine, and this is why I'm doing this video to tell you all about the common problems you're going to face, you're going to have if you own the BMW B57 engine in your BMW. So the first one I want to talk about is turbochargers on a B57. So as many of you guys know, there was a big problem with the turbochargers on BMW, Audi, Volkswagen, all over regarding the turbochargers and their wastegate rattle. As many of you guys know, they use an electronic wastegate actuator, which can cause a lot of rattling and become very annoying for most people. Now, as many of you guys know, that wasn't a recall. BMW didn't fix it for free. The only way to rectify that is to buy a new wastegate. Now, they are readily available out there to buy them. They're electronic ones, you can easily replace them. They're only held on by 4 bolts, and you can do it if you know what you're doing. But some people don't, and they just leave it, and it becomes very annoying. Not only that, it can actually destroy your turbo. Because it's electronic, it's not opening when the DME is requesting it to open, when it's engaging the turbo. So when it's trying to get rid of that atmospheric pressure from the turbo, it can't. That's what the wastegate is actually for. It's not opening and closing because it's electronic. Therefore, it can actually cause your turbo to fail. That's never a good thing. And that's why if you do any rattling or any kind of, when you rev up and you hear the rattling, it's going to be your wastegate. Therefore, I recommend you get it replaced. They are electronic, and like I said, they are readily available. Get them replaced. Many of you guys with the B57 will be probably having that issue. That's what you've got to do to rectify the issue. The next one on the BMW B57 is the high pressure fuel pump failing. That's become very common on the B57, and I've been seeing it a lot. I've seen a lot of people having that failure. A lot of the time for the high pressure fuel pump failing is not a cause of anyone else's. There was just a bad design on the B57 for the high pressure fuel pumps. People do upgrade them, and I know they do an upgraded one now for the B57 engine because BMW's one was flawed, and people are removing them and putting on an upgraded one purely for that reason. There's nothing you can really do about it. The only problem when the high pressure fuel pump goes is whatever damage has been done while it's been on there can end up damaging your injectors as well. And it also end up damaging your DPF, your EGR, swell flaps, everything on it because it's not running correctly. And a lot of people don't notice it straight away. They notice limp mode and reduced power, and then they just try and get the light off or turn the engine off, let it sit, restart it, and the problem goes away. And that's where the problems start coming from, is when people start doing that, not fixing the problem straight away, it leads to other problems, especially on the diesels. That's why if you are having any kind of problems with fuel pressure loss, it will be your high pressure fuel pump. Get it checked out and get it replaced, because as I said, they are known to fail, but on the B57, it's very common for them to fail. So the next one on the BMW B57 is the EGR cooler itself. They can fail, and it's due to a lot of heat, and when they get hot, they can actually damage the engine as well when they get overheated. Therefore, make sure to be checking your EGR. Now, the reason why these EGRs end up failing is usually because of a lot of people doing a lot of short journeys, which is why they end up failing in the first place. My best advice is do not do short journeys. I would strongly advise, if you're in a B57, every week, once a week, take it on the motorway and give it the thrashing it needs to clear out any junk out the EGR. The next one is the DPF clogging. Now, the diesel particulate filter, as many of you guys know, is used to burn off any kind of harmful chemicals or particles from the diesel engines. A lot of the time, them DPF can become clogged up from soot build-up and just people using them not for what they're intended to be used for. For instance, doing short journeys. The DPF doesn't get a chance to heat up. The glow plugs haven't heated up, which means the DPF ain't being able to burn off all the crap out of the DPF, which causes the DPFs to fail on them. A lot of people, as I said, buy diesels and use them just to pot around town or go local. Do not buy a diesel if you're doing that. That is really bad for the EGR and the DPF, and that's where a lot of the problems come from with diesel engines, especially on the B57. Is relevant on the B47 and B37. If you're in a B57 engine, make sure to let it come up to temperature and make sure your glow plugs are working. People don't realize how important the glow plugs are for a diesel, especially on a later diesel. The glow plugs help aid the burning process on the DPF to get rid of all the crap out the exhaust. If they're not functioning, your DPF will clog up and your engine will just stop completely running completely. It will not run. Many people have experienced that. A lot of people like to do away with it for remaps because they don't want to have to replace it. The best thing I could tell you to not have to replace it is to make sure you're using your diesel the way it was intended to be used for a long distance. As I tell everyone, if you're not doing 10 to 12,000 miles a year, do not buy a diesel. Buy yourself a petrol. It doesn't make sense. A lot of people want it for the torque, the power, but you can get that in a petrol. I don't understand. If you want torque power, you buy an M car. You don't need to go and buy a diesel. It doesn't make sense. It does not make viable sense. They are made for long distance, driving long distance. That's why BMW thought fit the EGR, the DPF, because people are going to be doing long distance with them. Not just pot into the shops, pot in 5 minutes down the road, turn the engine on off. The engine doesn't even get time to heat up, which if the engine doesn't heat up, all that suit does not melt down and break down easily. It becomes thick and stuck like tar to everything. If you guys that don't know anything about mechanicals, that is how a diesel works. It's very, very thick, like tar. You can go and get your car walnut blasted, but that is not going to solve the issue on clearing out your DPF at all. The best way to clear that is to run the engine up to temperature and thrash it to clear it all out so the glow plugs come up to temperature and end up using it properly to kill off everything in the DPF and your EGR valve. The next one that fails is the DPF pressure sensor. As many of you guys know, the DPFs have a pressure sensor on them, so when they get full of pressure, they will just throw an engine light on or won't let you start the car or will start cutting out or start bogging. That is very, very normal. As I said, the DPFs get clogged from doing too much short trips, so it will trigger the sensor. And if it triggers the sensor, you will have to reset it and go and drive that car. You have to force it into a regeneration cycle to be able to clear the DPF. A lot of people, I can tell you right now how many diesels I've had come to me, and most of the time, I can see on the system, they've never had a regeneration on the DPF. And I say to her, are you even using this car? They're like, I hardly use it. They use it like 3 times a week. They don't even do the mileage need for it. Hence why it doesn't do a generation on the DPF, on the EGR. So I have to force it with the scan tool to do a DPF regeneration to clear all the crap out. And that is not a nice experience to do, especially in my garage, because many of you guys don't know, a DPF regeneration, when you trigger it on the scan tool, will rev the car up to get it up to temperature and to force the glow plugs to activate to start clearing the crap out, and you just see a load of black smoke coming out of the exhaust. It is not a nice atmosphere at all, and neither is it a nice smell. It's not something you want to do, and garages will charge you a fortune for it because they don't like doing it either. They ain't just gonna plug up a scan and it takes 5 minutes. It doesn't. It can take up to half hour, 40 minutes to do a full DPF regeneration. That's why I'm telling you guys, make sure to get them up to temperature and make sure to run them, because that will trigger the sensor, and it's not the sensor. Many people go replacing it. It is not your DPF sensor. The sensor is letting you know there's a problem with the DPF, and the problem is that it's too built up in there. It needs to be cleaned out. Now, a lot of people as well always say about transmission issues, rough shifting, slipping gears. Now, you've got to remember, these are the ZF 8-speed gearboxes on these B57 engines. If you are having any of them issues, most of these B57s now are on what, 70, 80,000 miles? And let's be honest, anyone with a 3-litre diesel is not potting around local. They're giving it a thrashing. They want to think they're in some kind of M car, which they are not, but unfortunately, majority of people that own a B57 seem to think that they are. So they thrash the life out of the gearbox. What ends up happening with that is you produce a load more engine heat, a lot more heat on the gearbox, a lot more strain, which then means your fluid breaks down, which no longer protects the gearbox properly, the internals. Most people do not change the fluid and filter on the transmission because they're scared to do it. Garages won't do it either. My advice is make sure to get that fluid and filter changed. If you don't do that, that is what's going to cause rough shifting and also slipping clutches. You do not want that on your 8-speed transmission. Trust me on that, okay? I'm telling you right now, if you have any of that, get your fluid and filter changed, because I know many of you are experiencing that on your B57 engine, and diesels are notorious for it. Why? Because people thrash them from cold before the gearbox is even up to temperature, before the engine's even up to temperature, and they're thrashing them before the oil's even lubricating anything inside the gearbox, any of the moving parts. And that is why they end up with rough shifting and clutch packs going out and the mechatronics failing as well, because of people doing that, because they're just hitting them. And as many of you guys know on diesels, between first and second, there's like a delay between shifting. when the gearbox are cold. That's perfectly normal, okay? You need to let them come up to temperature. Drive them slowly. Keep the revs under 3,000 until it warms up. Do not thrash it. But many people won't understand that. It's like I'm speaking another language. That's what you have to do. If you don't want to do that, don't own a diesel. Do not own a diesel. I've owned many diesels and I've never, ever had a problem with the gearboxes. I even had the old X5 that people say is junk, goes wrong with the gearbox. I did thousands of miles in that. Never once had an issue with the gearbox, not once. And I didn't need to change the fluid because it was so low mileage. But even when it got to the mileage, I changed it and it was still flawless. But you know what? If that was in someone else's hands, the gearbox would already be slipping like most of them do. But unfortunately, it's all about how you treat the car. If you know how engines work and how oil works, you put 2 and 2 together and it should be basic knowledge. But unfortunately, there is people out there that do not understand. And I don't know how else to tell people. I try and tell people this all the time. Do not thrash your car when it's cold. If you don't know when it's cold and when it's hot, put your heaters on inside the car. When they are blowing hot air, it means the coolant is hot around the engine, circulating around the engine, which means the oil is at temperature. Then do what you want. Do not do it before that. It's very simple. The next one on the B57, which is very common as well, is the fuel filter clogging. This is known on all diesels, but the B57 is even more sensitive because of all the electronics, because of everything in place. A lot of people like to try and run them down to reserves or run the crappiest diesel you can find. And this is why they end up with it jerking, engine lights on, not running properly, going into limp mode, damaging the high pressure fuel pump from people running crappy fuel. Because even though the high pressure fuel pump was flawed by BMW, there is people still on the original ones that are now on 70, 80K on theirs with no issues. They are making it to 80K while some people are failing them at 50K. That's because these people seem to think they can run on the reserves. You cannot run a diesel onto the reserves. The fuel filter will clog up because it runs all the crap from the tank that sits at the bottom. And also, then you've got the people that run the cheapest of diesel into it. Or they'll run red diesel or green diesel if they can get hold of it and run it as cheap as possible. I still don't understand people's mentality to buy a 3-litre engine, buy any diesel engine, which is economical already, and then try and find the cheapest diesel you can to run that car. It will never ever make sense to me. Them people shouldn't own a BMW, and if you are watching this, you shouldn't be owning it. It's a fact. Because if you have to go to the cheapest way to run that car, you don't deserve that car. It's a fact. Sell it to someone who does. It's very simple. But unfortunately, these people think they have the money, but they can't have that much money because they're going for a diesel. They're not buying exactly an expensive M car here or a Porsche or a Lambo. They're buying a diesel, okay? And they want to run it as cheap as possible. Make it make sense, because it doesn't to me, but they are the problem for them cars. The people that buy them are the problem. The car isn't the problem, they are the problem. And until people start to realize that, then we will soon find out that BMW is reliable, and it's not unreliable. It's only unreliable in the wrong hands, irresponsible hands. But unfortunately, this is the way it's always going to go. Hence why so many people are getting away from the brand. It's not because they're unreliable, it's because of what it's attracting, the people it's attracting. And that's a fact. Speak to anybody, and they'll tell you that's why a lot of them go to Mercedes, or they're going more expensive, which people can't afford, to get away from the brand that people are abusing, neglecting, and giving the people that actually do look after them and do everything with them like me a bad name. Because we're not there to build the name up for people to tarnish it who ain't got a clue what they're actually doing or to how to look after their cars. When there is enough information out there showing you how to look after your car, you don't follow it, you do as you please. So another issue on them is sensors. The oxygen sensors can fail on the B57 along with the MAF sensors. Now, many of you guys would have already experienced this, and that can throw your car sideways. The MAF sensor is responsible for the air mixture, and it will make it run too lean or too rich. And then your oxygen sensors will do the same, which ends up leading to your miles per gallon being robbed, poor fuel economy, poor idling, poor running, not enough power, check engine lights coming on, you name it, you got it. They are known for the sensors going out, and the oxygen sensors end up clogging up thanks to the DPF clogging up, because they get suited up so badly, they can't tell the difference between a lean or a rich mixture anymore. And that's why they don't clog up, and they are not cheap to replace. The same with a MAF sensor. A lot of these faults can be solved if people use the diesels the way they are intended to be used. But as you can't teach people common sense, so therefore, that's why I'm putting it out there to you guys right now. If you do have any issues of them, it's going to be your oxygen sensors or your MAF sensors. So make sure to check your MAF sensor as well and your oxygen sensors, because they're all linked along with the DPF sensor. There's a lot of sensors underneath the bonnet. You need to know which one's what, because if you've got your lights on, this is why you need to have a scan tool to be able to diagnose it and fix it. Most of you won't probably fix it. You'll take it to a garage. And even if you do, it's going to be them faults. It's very, very common on them. And you guys have probably already experienced it and solved it already. So that brings me to my next one and the last one, which is the recall on the BMW B57 engine. So if you've got a B57 engine in your BMW, you will be probably aware of the recall from the fire risk. This is the reason why the police in the UK stopped using the BMWs with that engine, purely because of the coolant pump connector and the engine software management, which was causing the cars to go up in flames. Now, BMW have got a recall out for that, if many of you guys don't know about it, where they rectify the issue, where the coolant pump, bearing in mind it's electronic, wasn't kicking in, which was causing the engines to actually overheat. And then when they were overheating, was causing them to burst into flames from the oil causing the fire in the first place. So if you haven't had that done, you can literally go and get that done for free. You'll see it above here where they've got the recall out, and you can go and get it done for free. BMW do it for free for you. You can check everywhere, your local government websites, to see if your recall is outstanding. In the UK, you can go on the MOT history and it tells if the recall is outstanding on your B57 engine. Make sure to get it done, because if you haven't, your car is at risk of catching fire. Many people ain't aware of that, but yes, here, the police all use BMWs and they stopped using them after that happened to them quite a few times. And obviously, it only happens when you're using them in extreme conditions, like basically revving the nuts out of them, like the police do, and that's when they're going to flames, when the coolant pump cannot cool them down effectively and quickly enough for what the engine needs for the way it's being driven. And that's why they end up going up in flames. Great if they're in a chase, ain't it? And they end up with their engine seizing right in the middle of it, they'd be laughed at. That's why the police end up cutting ties with BMW completely for that happening. And if you guys ain't had that recall done on your B57, go and get it done. It's all free, BMW don't charge you. They'll update all the software and make the coolant pump run and come on when it's needed. But like I say, it did affect a lot of them, and that's the main recall on the B57 engine, is just the coolant pump, and they'll update the software and program it to make it work effectively. But that's all there is to the B57 engine on the BMW. Now, if you are considering getting one, I wouldn't say to shy away from it, because it's a solid and reliable engine, unlike all the other 2 litres, 3-cylinder ones with a timing chain braking. B57 don't suffer with the timing chain problem. Again, why is that? Because it's a 6-cylinder engine. BMW don't have problems with 6-cylinder engines. They have problems with 2 litres and their smaller engines with a 1.5. Unfortunately, BMW are very good at building 6-cylinder engines. Yes, they have their faults, but once all them faults are rectified, they are solid and reliable cars, just like the M57, the old M52, M54. BMW never have problems with their 6-cylinder engines. It's usually their V8s and their 2 litres. I don't know what they do there. They can never balance it and get them right. I know BMW hate themselves for having to do 2-litre engines, and if they could pull away, they would. But I hope this video is going to clear up a lot of this common problems on the B57 engine, and I hope it will clear up a lot of the issues regarding the B57 engine for you guys who are looking to buy one or have one. Thank you very much for watching, guys. It's BMW Dr. Dean here, and goodbye.